Here's another good question. How much weight does the interview process hold in admissions decisions? That's a really good question. As I said before, this is not the most important piece of your college admissions process. Things like your grades, your activities, your extracurriculars, your test scores, should you choose to submit them, letters of recommendation. I believe that these are all more important. But what is very unique and interesting about the interview is that it has the potential to recontextualize everything else in your application. The interview is the sort of thing that can really make admissions committees go back and take a second look. For example, and that could be in a good way or a bad way. For example, if I meet someone who is if I read an application, for example, I do not read applications myself, but if I were to read an application that was the student was incredibly driven, really accomplished, but I had an interview experience with them where they seemed bitter or not passionate or really spoke ill of their peers or looked down on other people, that would really make me take a second look at their application. And I know that I've seen applications for students where on paper they were great, but their interview actually did make their application weaker. The interview process is a great opportunity for college admissions committees to learn a little bit more about you from a slightly different dimension. And I would say an interview process if you're on the fence, if you're on the cusp of being admitted versus being not admitted, the interview can push you on either side of that fence, depending on how it goes. It's also a way that can make you stand out against students who on paper look similar to you. That interview process and how you compose yourself and even though it is one of the less crucial elements of your application and has less bearing. Like for example, an interview, if your application as a whole is fundamentally not very competitive and not very demonstrative of the type of student that a college wants on their campus, a good interview likely won't really change that outcome. Likewise, the most accomplished applicants, usually an interview won't break their application. It typically won't make or break your application, but it can, again, make commissions officers take a second look and can push you over the edge if you're on the cusp. What information do interviewers have on the student beforehand? That's a good question. This will vary depending on the school. And I honestly don't know how every school does it, but my assumption would be that they know a little bit about you because they need some context. Again, a lot of the time it's regional. So you might be interviewing students who are from around your area. So that's some context, but I don't typically think that interviewers have access to all of the information. I don't think that interviewers are going to see your whole application. They might know just a little bit to get the conversation started, but I don't think that they're going to know everything. So again, you might have to do some explaining about the things that you do. You can't assume that they already know this information. That's what I would say. But again, I don't necessarily know, and it may vary depending on the school. Does the interviewer have a ranking sheet, or how does the interviewer present the results of the interview to the selection committee? Good question. I want to preface this by saying this will vary depending on the school. Every school could have its own way of evaluating applicants, but typically my guess is it would be some combination of some sort of a ranking letter. It could be a number coupled with some sort of evaluative qualitative description, some sort of like a paragraph or sort of written a report of some kind. That would be my guess for how you'd be evaluated. I don't think that it would just be some sort of a ranking because that doesn't really capture the nuance of your personality. And the whole point of the interview is to get a sense of how you conduct yourself and who you are as a person. So I don't think some sort of metric like a letter or a number would do that on its own. But I think it's more likely that you would have maybe that and some sort of a write-up or some sort of paragraph or some sort of evaluative write-up of some kind. That to me seems like the most likely way. Ranking sheet, it's very possible that the interviewer will have some sort of a predetermined metric evaluating you, but I also think that will likely be coupled at the very least with some sort of written admissions committee, if I had to guess. But again, keep in mind that every school might do this slightly differently, but I believe there will likely almost certainly be some sort of qualitative written component to it.